Parkdale. What can I tell you about this place? It's an old neighborhood on the southwest edge of Toronto, defined by a mental hospital to the east, streetcar loop to the west, train tracks to the north, and Lake Ontario to the south. Yes, it's rough in spots, but not like people make it out to be. Some of my friends, for instance, they think I've got a poverty fetish for wanting to live in Parkdale, like I'm some kind of rim-gripping gutter romantic in love with human decay and the downward spiral. But it's not like that. I've got history here. It's something I've never had anyplace else. It wasn't anything I felt right away. In fact, it didn't even begin to dawn on me until a phone call home about a month after I'd moved in. My mother, O'Hara Avenue? Well, that's where your Uncle Willie died. Some dump in Parkdale. Right here, 15 years ago. Some dump in Parkdale. Uncle Willie'd never lived here before then, although he spent time here as a kid. He grew up a couple miles east of here, back in the days when Parkdale was a summertime playground. Sunnyside Amusement Park. And the X, where he and his brothers had worked when they were younger. There's a photo of my father's that shows Willie as a kid. The little guy, scrawny, fair-haired, hole in his heart, diabetic. Looks like a young Art Garfunkel. For the five O'Reilly boys back in the 40s, Parkdale was a Ferris wheel ride, a first date stroll by the lake, a 15-minute ride on the streetcar, and a slow walk home at the end of the day. The playground aspect of this place is pretty much gone. These days, Parkdale is a place where people end up, like me, like my uncle, because of depressed real estate values, cheap rentals, or because of its proximity to this place, the Queen Street, where my Uncle Willie ended up twice. His first crack-up was when he lost his job in shipping and receiving at the airport. Willie'd been working there for 17 years when the Mounties pinched him for stealing, junk mostly. It was a shame because Willie wasn't really even a criminal. It was nicking and hawking for Willie, not really theft. You know, nick a few radios off a skid at work, hawk them for peanuts to some of the guys at the hotels. The Palace Tavern and Legion Hall, before the tavern part got painted over, where my Uncle Eddie spent a good chunk of his disabled veterans checks downing glasses of 7-ounce draft while complaining about how the Korean War had ruined his nerves. The Parkview Hotel, right across the street from Bates and Dodds, where my Uncle Johnny spent half his waking hours downing glasses of 7-ounce draft while sitting at the bar inside, when it was a bar, before it was a rooming house or whatever. And Gladstone Hotel, where my Uncle Phil worked for 35 years slinging trays full of 7-ounce draft. Back when my Uncle Phil used to work at the Gladstone, back when Uncle Willie used to hang out and hawk his wares there, well, back before all that, in the 70s, my Uncle Willie was a pretty regular working stiff. He had a house, a wife, 2 kids, and a huge black and white TV with a tricolor piece of cellophane stuck to the front of it. He was the first bald man I'd seen up close. He was a bit of a shit disturber of the, you gonna let him get away with that variety. His daughter Claire had epilepsy and a hole in her heart, just like her old man. And his boy Junior squawked like a foghorn and had hair missing in chunks from where he used to bonk his head against the wall to put himself to sleep at night. But when he got pinched at the airport, though, all that slipped away from him. He cracked up. Though his family would tell you they could see it coming. Willie'd started getting a little reckless with his nicking and hawking. When he got caught, they all thought it was an act. They thought he was playing nuts to get off the hook. Not my father, though. He blamed Willie's wife for pressuring the little guy to live beyond his means. He blamed his brothers for egging the little guy on in the hotels. He blamed them all for driving the little guy nuts, then for ditching him when he got pinched. When my Uncle Willie was sent here for the first time back in 1977, we just moved back to Toronto, so we were a little green to the whole situation, like how he ended up here to begin with and how he'd managed to piss his whole family off. So my father rushed in to claim him. The state was happy to release Willie into my father's custody. Hell, they were getting rid of everyone. Deinstitutionalization, I think they called it. What it means is, you're on your own. What it means is, fewer beds and more prescriptions. Very progressive. My father got Willie off the pills and into our tiny apartment in the suburbs, a lot like one of these. Soon thereafter, my Uncle Willie managed to convince my father of 2 things. One, that helping him down a case of beer a day was as good a therapy as anything he could get from a drugstore. And two, that if his boys were big enough to work part-time, they should be paying rent. So at the ages of 15 and 17, my brother and I started paying $35 a week for the privilege of sharing our photomat-sized public housing project apartment with my convalescing Uncle Willie. After 6 months, my mother gave Willie the boot. So he hit the streets, cruising for compassion, couch, and coin from the rest of his family. One by one, his brothers took him in. One by one, their wives turfed him out. One by one, his brothers would apologize for their wives' discompassionate behavior. One by one, Willie accepted their apologies by accepting countless free 7-ounce glasses of draft beer. One by one, he wore out his welcome by blaming them all for his problems. And one by one, he would push them all to the snapping point. Phil had him barred from the Gladstone. Eddie had him barred from the Palace. Then, Johnny threatened to kill Willie if he ever set foot in the Parkview again. A few days later, Johnny was robbed and beaten outside the bar by a bunch of lowlifes Johnny had seen around Willie from time to time. They punched him out right here, in the glare of the sign from Bates and Dodds, the funeral home, the place where all the dead O'Reillys are shown, the place where both Willie and Johnny would be shown, then incinerated in the years to come. After that, Willie moved to Mississauga and started terrorizing a whole new set of friends. Willie's Mississauga period ended after he was barred from the only hotel in the area, which he then set fire to by placing a garbage can full of newspaper against the hallway on the second floor. He lit it, then went out to the parking lot where he chewed his nails to the quick. Then he U-turned, went back into the lobby, and turned himself into the cops on the payphone. That's how Willie ended up in the Queen Street for the second time. Again, he was tested, talked to, drugged, diagnosed, and set free. So he ambled westward a few blocks and into Parkdale proper. Ending up in this place on O'Hara Avenue, in a basement apartment, not far from the family nest, but far enough away to drop completely out of sight. Rumor has it that Willie was pretty bad by the time he hit Parkdale, that he was swilling around with a lot of bottom-feeding scum. A couple weeks after he moved in, a Bell Canada guy had come to hook him up, found him on his bed, 3 days dead, with a cast on his leg and his throat cut. Nobody knew he had moved to O'Hara. Nobody knew he had a broken leg. Nobody really knew him anymore by then. We found out about it on the TV news. My dad told me that the family sat around in shock after the showing, eyeing each other, trying to figure out which one of them did it. The cops got the guy about a week later. Nobody any of us knew. Some jacked-up hard-case wacko who lived upstairs from Willie. Somebody who probably ended up here for the same reasons he did. I'm sure that place looked different 15 years ago. I guess the city's tried to hide it away. But I know what's inside. Part of this neighborhood. A piece of my home. Let me see the watch. Let me see it.
Works good like a charm.
It works?
$45 watch. It should work.
Okay, 10 smackers.
I wouldn't con you.
There you go.
I'm not a con.
Thanks a lot, pal.
Welcome.
Hasta luego.
Okay, you finished with this ugly face?